In the rain-soaked streets of London, a past thought buried resurfaces. Noah fled, leaving behind a secret, a son, and a storm he never saw coming. Damian Voss, the man he once loved and feared, returns, challenging everything Noah has built. Between stolen moments, unanswered questions, and a child caught in the middle, their hearts collide again. Secrets, love, and choices intertwine in a story of passion, regret, and the ties that refuse to break. Don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Serenity for more interesting stories. Like, share, and subscribe. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. London always had a way of drowning secrets in its weather, and tonight, the city felt like it was crying for me. I pressed my palm against the cold window of the hospital's waiting room, watching the drops race each other down the glass while the sound of Jaime's shallow breathing echoed behind me. Please, just a little longer, I whisper, not sure if I was praying to God or begging the universe. Jaime's fever had spiked again, and the nurse said the pediatrician was on his way. My heart hadn't stopped racing since we arrived. I kept glancing at the doors like a hunted man waiting for his ghost. And then, the ghost walked in. Damian Voss. Even after 3 years, I knew that posture, the way he carried the air like it belonged to him. Black coat, gloves, that cold gaze that could freeze fire. My breath caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this city. Not in this life. Not tonight. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world stilled. His expression didn't change, but his hands clenched. He knew. He'd always known how to find me, no matter how far I ran. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, like a storm that had finally found its target. "You're alive," he said, voice low, steady, too calm for what it meant. I tried to speak, but the words broke before they formed. "Damir, please, don't." He took another step closer, and I felt his fury vibrate through the space between us. 3 years, Noah, 3 years I buried you. Do you have any idea what that does to a man? My legs trembled, but I couldn't move. He looked the same, impossibly put together, intimidating, and beautiful in the way danger sometimes is. "You don't understand," I managed to whisper. "He's sick, Jaime's sick." At that, his jaw tensed, his eyes shifted, not to me, but to the small boy lying on the hospital bed. And in that instant, something flickered behind his expression, recognition. He turned back to me, voice shaking with something sharp. "You told me you were dead, and you left him behind." The room spun. The nurses moved in the background, voices muffled like static. I could only focus on the way Damian's hand slid inside his coat, not for comfort, but for control. The faint glint of metal caught the light. My pulse shot through my skull. "Damir, don't. Please. Not here. He's our son." That stopped him. For a second, the fire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by disbelief. His hand lowered, and he stared at me as if I had spoken a language only he could understand. "Our son," he repeated. Jaime stirred and whimpered softly, his skin pale and glistening with sweat. I rushed to his side, placing the damp cloth back on his forehead. "Please," I said, my voice cracking, "help me get him to the pediatric ward. Then you can say whatever you need to. Just, not now." Damir hesitated. It was strange, seeing the man who once owned every breath I took suddenly frozen, unsure. Finally, he nodded once, clipped and reluctant. "Fine," he muttered, "but you're not running again." We walked down the sterile corridor, silence pressing between us. I could feel the weight of his stare at my back, heavy with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Every step echoed like footsteps toward my own undoing. When we reached the ward, the doctor rushed in to check Jaime. I sat beside the bed, trying to hold myself together. Damir stood by the doorway, arms folded, face unreadable. The years apart hadn't softened him. If anything, he looked harder, colder. But his eyes, they carried something I couldn't name. "He is your eyes," Damir finally said. His voice was quiet now, like a memory. I froze, staring at Jaime's small hand in mine. "He doesn't need to pay for what we broke, Damir. He's just a child." His lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "You think disappearing fixes things?" I didn't answer. How could I tell him that I faked my death because it was the only way to survive him? That the love I felt had turned into something that strangled me every day? That the night I found out I was pregnant, I realized the only way to protect our son was to vanish. The words burned in my throat, but I swallowed them. The doctor interrupted, explaining that Jaime's fever was stabilizing. Relief flooded me, followed by guilt, the kind that never really leaves. When the doctor left, Damir spoke again, softer this time. You could have told me. I looked up at him, eyes wet, voice low. And you would have done what? Locked me in that house again. Controlled every part of me until I forgot who I was. He looked wounded for a moment, a flash of emotion quickly buried. I would have kept you safe. No. Damir, I whispered, standing, you would have kept me yours. Silence fell. Then, he exhaled slowly, stepping closer until I could feel his warmth. The scent of his cologne brought back to many nights I tried to forget. He touched Jaime's blanket, just a finger grazing the fabric. I missed 3 years of his life, he murmured, almost to himself, and yours. I turned away before the tears fell. You lost those years the day you stopped seeing me as a person. He said nothing, but as I looked into the glass reflection of the ward door, I saw his hand tighten into a fist. There was pain there. Deep, dangerous pain. And I knew this wasn't over. When I actually left the ward that night, Damir followed me out of the hospital. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy, thick with unfinished stories. He called out my name. I didn't turn. I already knew. Whatever storm was waiting next, it had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Damir, standing under that flickering hospital light, his expression a mix of fury, disbelief, and something that scared me more than either. Longing. By dawn, the city was waking up. London's streets glistened from last night's rain, and I sat by the window of my small apartment, clutching a mug of cold coffee I hadn't touched. Jaime was finally sleeping peacefully in the next room, the fever broken but leaving him fragile. The quiet should have brought peace. It didn't. It only reminded me how temporary peace had always been in my life. I checked the clock. 6:45 a.m. Too early for anyone to knock, but the knock came anyway. 3 slow taps, firm, certain, familiar. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I told myself it couldn't be him. Maybe it was the landlord, or Elena coming to check on us. But the longer I waited, the more the air around me thickened. I opened the door, and there he was. Damian Voss. Again, no coat this time, just a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, as if he hadn't slept either. His hair was messy, eyes shadowed. He looked human, in a way I wasn't used to seeing him. Good morning, he said, voice low, rough. You weren't answering your phone? I changed my number, I replied quietly, gripping the edge of the door. His gaze flicked over me, studying, like he was trying to memorize what 3 years had done to me. May I come in? No. He arched an eyebrow. No, just my name. But it carried a warning, the kind that made my skin prickle. I sighed, stepping aside just enough for him to enter. Maybe it was exhaustion, or guilt, or the part of me that still hadn't learned how to say no to him for long. He walked in like he still owned the space, even though it was barely bigger than his old office bathroom. His eyes swept the room, the second-hand furniture, the cracked wallpaper, the toys scattered on the floor. I saw something shift in his expression again. You've been living here, he asked, his tone unreadable. Yes, with our son. Don't say it like you earned the right to call him that, I snapped before I could stop myself. He turned sharply to face me, jaw tight. You stole 3 years of his life from me. Noah, you don't get to play the victim. I laughed bitterly. Victim? Damir, you broke me. You made me disappear. His eyes softened, only slightly. I made mistakes, he admitted. But you should have told me about him, about Jaime. I wanted to. I almost did, I whispered. Then I remembered what it felt like to live in your house. The cameras, the silence, the fear of saying the wrong thing. You called that love. He looked down, his silence saying more than words ever could. For a moment, I thought he might actually apologize. But Damian Voss didn't apologize, he recalculated. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. I'm not here to fight. I came to see him, just him. I studied his face. You'll scare him. I won't, he said softly. And for the first time, I almost believed him. I hesitated before nodding toward Jaime's room. Damir walked quietly, pausing at the door. Jaime was curled up under his blanket, small and peaceful. Damir stood there, frozen, like he was afraid that if he blinked, the bow would vanish. He looks like you, he murmured. Same eyes, same hair. And your stubbornness, I said under my breath. He smiled faintly. A rare, fleeting thing. He deserves better than this. I stiffened. Don't start. I mean it. Noah. He should have stability, proper care, education. And you think you can give him that? The man who made me terrified of breathing wrong. His smile disappeared. The air between us thickened again. For a second, I thought he'd yell, but instead he exhaled, slow and controlled. You think I don't know I hurt you? I turned away, gripping the window frame. Then why does it feel like you came here to do it again? He didn't answer. I could feel him behind me, close enough that the warmth of his body brushed against my back. Because, he finally said, I don't know how to let go of what's mine. That sentence broke something in me. I spun around, tears hot behind my eyes. I'm not yours, Damir. Not anymore. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw uncertainty flicker through his gaze. He reached up, almost touching my face, but stopped halfway. You still say my name the same way, he whispered. Before I could respond, Jaime's small voice interrupted us. Mama, he said, half asleep, his little hand rubbing his eyes. I rushed to him, kneeling beside the bed. Hey, baby, it's okay, you're safe. Jaime blinked, then noticed Damir standing behind me. Who's that? The room froze again. I looked back at Damir, who seemed suddenly lost, a man used to commanding boardrooms, not 4-year-olds. I swallowed hard. That's a friend, sweetheart. Damir's jaw clenched, but he didn't correct me. He simply gave Jaime a soft, uncertain smile. Hi, Jaime. Hi. Jaime murmured shyly, clutching his stuffed bear. Something softened in Damir's face, a glimpse of tenderness hadn't seen since before everything went wrong. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He turned to me. We need to talk, alone. I sighed, brushing Jaime's hair. Later. I'll wait, he said, voice calm but firm, the tone of a man who never accepted no for an answer. As he walked back into the living room, I felt my pulse quicken again. Part of me wanted him gone. Another part, the broken, familiar part, wanted him to stay. Because no matter how much I hated him, no one had ever looked at me the way Damian Voss did, like I was both his salvation and his sin. By noon, the air in my apartment felt too small for both of us. Damir had been sitting on my couch for nearly an hour, saying nothing, just watching Jaime play with his building blocks on the floor. It was like he decided silence was his new weapon. Quiet, steady, unnerving. I made tea mostly to have something to do with my hands. You can't stay long, I said, finally breaking the tension. He didn't look up. I didn't plan to. That was a lie. Damir never showed up anywhere without a plan. Jaime looked up from his toes and smiled. Mr. Damir, look, he said, holding up a crooked tower of colorful blocks. Damir's expression softened. He leaned forward slightly, the hint of a smile tugging at his lips. That's impressive, he said. You built that all by yourself. Jaime nodded proudly. Mum helped a little. The word mum hit him. I saw it. A flash of confusion, quickly masked. He glanced at me, eyes unreadable. He had no right to feel anything about that word. Not after everything he'd done. I should go, I said, standing. Jaime needs to rest. Damir rose too. I'll walk you to the pharmacy. You mentioned he needs more medicine. I froze. You were listening. He shrugged. Always have been. It was such a Damir thing to say. Simple, invasive, dangerous. I wanted to say no, to slam the door and lock it forever. But something about the steadiness in his tone made me hesitate. Maybe part of me wanted to see what he would do next. Fine, I said. 10 minutes. We walked through the damp London streets in silence. The wind carried the faint smell of coffee and city smoke. Damir walked slightly behind me, his pace matching mine like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Finally, he spoke. You really thought I wouldn't find you? I hoped you wouldn't care enough to try. He gave a low, humorless laugh. You know me better than that. That's exactly the problem. We stopped outside the pharmacy. I could feel his eyes on me again, studying the tension in my shoulders, the way I kept one arm wrapped around myself. You've changed, he said. You look stronger. I had to be. He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting toward the glass window where Jaime's reflection flickered in the stroller beside me. He deserves more than this. Noah, you're barely getting by. I'm surviving, I snapped. That's more than I could say when I was with you. The words hung between us, sharp and heavy. Damir didn't flinch, but I saw his jaw tighten. You make it sound like I was your enemy. You were, I said quietly. You just called it love. He looked away then, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Guilt, real, unfiltered guilt. When we got home, he helped carry the pharmacy bag in silence. Jaime ran ahead, humming to himself. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Damir stopped at the doorway, hand resting on the frame. Let me help you, Noah. Financially, I can pay for his school, his healthcare. You wouldn't have to struggle like this. I folded my arms. You think you can buy your way back? His gaze darkened. That's not what I meant. But it's what you're doing. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You're exhausted, Noah. I can see it. Let me make things easier. I shook my head. You can't fix what you broke. Maybe not, he said softly, but I can try. Something in his tone, that dangerous mix of sincerity and control, pulled at me. For a second, I almost believed him. Almost. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. My whole body went still. The touch was gentle, almost hesitant, but my heart reacted like it remembered every time he'd used that same gesture before everything fell apart. Don't, I whispered. He withdrew his hand. Eyes soft but unreadable. I'll be around, he said finally, turning toward the door. Damir, he paused. I hesitated, then asked, why now? Why come back after all this time? He looked over his shoulder, and his expression shifted. No longer angry, no longer soft. Just broken, because, he said, I never stopped looking for you. And when I found you, I realized I'd never stopped loving you either. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space he left. My chest ached, my mind screaming at me to forget the sound of his voice. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I'd been running from. The slow, careful way Damian Voss always made his way back in. It started with small things, a knock at noon instead of night, groceries I hadn't bought waiting at my doorstep, a new toy appearing in Jaime's hands that I didn't remember paying for. Every time I confronted Damir, he had the same answer. Just helping. Helping. That word began to taste like control. I told myself I'd stop him, that I'd draw a line, but lines blur when the person crossing them knows every weakness you hide. One evening, I came home from my shift at the cafe to find Damir sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, reading to Jaime from one of his picture books. His coat was off, sleeves rolled, tie loose, a version of him I'd never known in the years we were together. Jaime giggled at something in the story, and Damir smiled, a real one. For a moment, I stood frozen in the doorway, confused by the sight. Then he looked up. You're home early. I didn't realize you were still coming here. You didn't tell me to stop. The audacity of it should have made me furious. Instead, it just made me tired. I didn't tell you to start, either. He closed the book gently and set it aside. Jaime asked if I could read to him. I didn't want to say no. Jaime climbed into my arms, still laughing. Mr. Damir says he used to have a big dog when he was little. I nodded absently, eyes locked on Damir. It's late. Say goodnight, sweetheart. After tucking Jaime in, I returned to the living room. Damir was by the window, watching the city lights. You can't keep showing up like this, I said. He didn't turn around. He likes me. That's not the point. I'm his father, Noah. I felt the words like a knife twisting. You forfeited that right the night you. I stopped myself. The memories still hurt too much to voice. He finally faced me, his expression unreadable. The night I what? The night you locked me in that penthouse and called it protection. He flinched, just barely, but it was enough. I was scared of losing you. You did. We stood there in silence. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us. Then he said quietly, I went to see a specialist yesterday. I frowned. What specialist? The one who handled your case 3 years ago. My breath caught. You had no right. He stepped closer. I had every right. You disappeared with a medical condition no one could explain. They told me it was impossible, that a man couldn't carry a child. But you did, Noah. How? My pulse thundered. You shouldn't be asking me that. I need to know. His voice cracked, not with anger, but desperation. It startled me more than shouting ever could. I don't know, I said finally. They called it an anomaly, a genetic mutation. All I know is that it happened, and I survived. He studied me, eyes dark and searching. And you never told anyone else. I couldn't. They wouldn't believe me. You barely did. He looked down, then whispered, "I believed you. I just didn't know how to handle it." For a second, the air softened. Then, as if catching himself, he straightened his posture. "You should move back in with me." I blinked. "What? It makes sense. Jaime will have a stable home. You'll have help. You don't have to struggle anymore." "No," I said immediately. "You're being stubborn. I'm being free." His voice dropped, colder now. "You think you can raise him alone forever? I've been doing it for years." He took another step toward me, eyes narrowing. "And what happens when he starts asking questions you can't answer? When he wants to know who his father is? Then I'll tell him the truth." "What truth?" "Noah." His voice rose. "That you ran, that you lie, that you let him grow up without me." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "That I left because I was afraid of dying under your love." The word stopped him. For the first time, Damir looked small, like the weight of it all had finally cracked something inside him. He turned away, hands trembling slightly. "I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did." He nodded slowly. "Then let me make it right. By taking over again, by taking care of you." I shook my head. "That's the same thing, Damir." We stood in silence again, the kind that hums with unfinished war. Then he said something that chilled me to the bone. "I already spoke to a lawyer. I'm filing for joint custody." The world tilted. "You wouldn't." He met my eyes. Steady, certain. "You left me no choice." I took a step back, breath unsteady. "You can't just walk back in and claim what you lost." He moved closer, his voice soft, dangerous. "I never lost you, Noah. You just forgot who you belong to." The air went cold. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, "Get out." He hesitated, searching my face for something. Fear, weakness, maybe permission. Finding none, he finally turned and walked to the door. Before leaving, he glanced at Jaime's room. "I'll be back tomorrow, with papers." The door clicked shut, and the echo lingered. I sank to the floor, shaking. Somewhere in the next room, Jaime stirred and called softly for me. I wiped my tears and went to him, whispering a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. "It's okay, baby, I won't let anyone take you." But deep down, I already knew. Damian Voss never made promises he didn't intend to keep, and he never fought a battle he planned to lose.